Okay, we're starting cold and dark. Let's do our Cessna 172 SP checklist. Let's set the parking brake. Let's make sure the electrical equipment and autopilot are off. Avionics master switch is off. The fuel selector valve is set to both. We need to push in the fuel cutoff so it is no longer cut off. And to start, we will open the throttle about 1/4 inch, set the mixture to full rich, and make sure the propeller area is clear, and then shout, "Clear prop!" We'll turn the master switch on, we'll turn the auxiliary fuel pump on, the ignition switch will turn to start, and when the engine starts, we'll release it. Your fuel is shut off, let's have it pushed on, please. We want the parking brake on when starting, master battery on when starting. We want the throttle open about 1/4 inch when starting. Check the oil pressure. Let's have the fuel pump off. Avionics master switch on, please. While we're taxiing, let's check the instruments by making some turns. We need to make sure that the attitude indicator is tilting by no more than 5 degrees. The turn coordinator is tilting in the direction of our turns. The ball and the inclinometer is on the outside of our turns. So we turn left, it goes to the right. So we turn right, it goes to the left. The heading indicator is showing the right heading, and the whiskey compass is showing the right heading. Okay, to do our run-up, we have to first select a place where we can stop. Facing into the wind, we want to select a surface where we're not going to kick up a lot of debris. Make sure that behind us we don't have any people, aircraft, animals, vehicles. We'll set the parking brake and run the throttle up to 1800 RPM. And then we'll turn the key so we can check the magnetos. We're looking for a less than 150 RPM drop on each one, with less than a 50 RPM difference between magnetos. And we're going to turn the key to the left magneto, then the right magneto, and then back to the left magneto, and then back to both, at which point we're done, and we can bring the throttle back to idle. You've got too much flaps. You can use 10 degrees if you need it. Okay, so you're ready to take off? We want the strobe lights on, we want the radios and avionics set, we want the autopilot off, trim set for takeoff, and the wing flap set at 0, or 10 degrees is necessary. We want the brakes off and the mixture set to full rich, unless you're above 3,000 feet, in which case it should be leaned to obtain maximum RPM. We're going to put the throttle fully open, and we'll be able to lift the nose wheel at 55 knots indicated airspeed, and let's climb between 70 and 80 knots indicated airspeed. Throttle smoothly up to full. You can lift the nose wheel at 55 knots. Use right rudder to neutralize any yawing to the left. Our best angle of climb speed is 62 knots. Our best rate of climb speed is 74 knots. We don't want the fuel selector on left or right unless we're flying in level flight. Let's cruise between 2100 and 2700 RPM and lean the mixture to obtain maximum RPM above 3,000 feet. If we encounter heavy turbulence, we need to be at or below maneuvering speed. And remember, this will decrease as we burn fuel. In this aircraft, we normally turn with a 20-degree bank. And with a 20-degree bank, we want to begin our rollout from the turn, about 20 degrees before reaching our desired heading. Our fuel is about 70%. Stall speed with flaps up is 48 knots. Stall speed with flaps down is 40 knots. We need smooth air to fly into the yellow arc above 129 knots. You must never exceed 163 knots. One or both of our fuel tanks are low and you may wish to consider refueling. Okay, you've begun your descent to landing. Let's have the power set as desired. Magnetos on both, mixture set for smooth operation. That's full rich for idle power, otherwise let's lean above 3,000 feet. And below 3,000 feet, go to full rich. And let's have the fuel selector valve set to both. We can have 10 degrees of flaps below 110 knots. Let's have the autopilot off. Let's use pitch to control our airspeed and power to control our rate of descent. Below 85 knots, we can have more than 10 degrees of flaps. Remember, you'll flare about 10 to 15 feet, raising the nose about 10 degrees. We're about to land, so we need the fuel selector valve on both, magnetos on both, mixture full rich, unless above 3,000 feet, in which case lean it, landing lights on, autopilot off. We want to land with 30 degrees of flaps, 1900 RPM, 65 knots. At 10 to 15 feet, reduce power to idle and flare. Okay, our shutdown procedure is as follows. Once we've taxied to our parking place, we're going to set the parking brake and make sure the flaps are fully retracted. Pull the mixture off and pull out the fuel cutoff valve. We'll switch off the avionics and switch off the nav beacon and any other lights we might have on. Switch the alternator off, switch the master battery off, switch the ignition key off, remove the key, and that's it.